Okay, so welcome to everybody again. So I'm Raju. I'm representing the program committee of the Indian Institute of World Culture today. And we at the Indian Institute of World Culture, we had an event just last Tuesday, which was to commemorate the centenary of Patrice Lumumba, the first Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo, a freedom fighter, and a revolutionary. So we decided that we'll take that occasion to really honor the several freedom fighters from the African freedom struggles. And that's why we prepared an exhibition, which we'll start with. But just as introduction, I wanted to say that the Indian Institute of World Culture is a place that is a center for culture. It was started in 1945, so it's now 80 years. It was started before actually India formally gained independence. And it was really started as a place um, for dialogue, as a place for discussion, as a place for culture, and not just for scholars, but really for ordinary men and women. And the hope was that it would promote universal brotherhood, that it would promote a truly cosmopolitan spirit. And in that way, the Institute has participated the in the struggle for equal relationships between people, between civilizations, and so on. We're very happy today to partner in this with the National Institute of Advanced Study, which I think many of you are familiar with, and maybe later Professor Chandan would like to say a little bit about. But to begin with, we will uh, just show you the exhibition since many people are here who could not be in Bangalore. We prepared a video exhibition, a video of our exhibition along with the walkthrough. So we had several pictures, so we wanted to keep it short, but it ended up being about 20 minutes. So I hope that is okay and all of you uh, will will enjoy the presentation. So I will now start with sharing my screen and showing you the exhibition that we prepared for four leaders, really five, but here we'll focus on four, which is Patrice Lumumba from the Congo, Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana, Oliver Tambo from South Africa, and Amilcar Cabral from Guinea-Bissau. And then we'll have the next section, which will be the presentations on them by various scholars. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, it looks good. Good.
Okay, and let me just also test the audio once. So just tell me if it's playing.
No, audio is not there, Raju.
Oh, 1 second then. Let me share again. Mm. What about now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's good.
Great. So let me start. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is an exhibition which is dedicated to the legacy of Patrice Lumumba, the first Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo. This year is the centenary of Lumumba, and so we are doing an exhibition to honor him and his legacy. Along with Lumumba, the exhibition is also dedicated to E.S. Reddy. And E.S. Reddy is an Indian who grew up in India, in Andhra Pradesh, and then went to New York for his studies, where he joined the UN and became part of the struggle against apartheid. And he is somebody who really for us exemplifies the close connections between Indians and Africans in the context of our liberation struggle and our freedom struggles. This exhibition is dedicated, to Lumumba, but it covers various figures, and we decided to dedicate it to 4 figures: Oliver Tambo from South Africa, Patrice Lumumba, of course, from the Congo, Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana, and Amilcar Cabral from Guinea-Bissau. And so we'll cover 4 of these countries in this exhibition. Yeah. So we'll start with the Congo and Patrice Lumumba.
So basically, we wanted to start by giving some background about the Congo and what the conditions were under colonialism. And actually, the Congo is it's a particularly brutal case because even before it was a colony of Belgium, it was the personal property of King Leopold. So a lot of the atrocities that went on in the Congo, he was not really answerable even to a parliament. It was his personal property, so he could do whatever he wanted. And there was a lot of brutality, like he would ask for a certain amount of rubble to be extracted, and if it was not given to him, then people's limbs would be cut off. And people talk about Hitler, but really one has to ask whether somebody like King Leopold was any better than what was happening in Germany in the Second World War. But also the Congo is a very rich region, minerally rich region. It has a lot of mineral resources, coal, diamond, water resources, which is part of why Belgium was not willing to give up economic control of the nation for a long time. And it is in this context that you get the emergence of Patrice Lumumba. And Lumumba really grows up hearing about the atrocities in the Congo. He also grows up hearing about the history of rebellion in the Congo. And he gets educated. He doesn't even complete high school, but he works as a postal clerk. And he develops his ideas, his political ideas. And in '58, he actually travels to Ghana, to Accra, to attend the Pan-African People's Conference, which was organized by Kwame Nkrumah. And Ghana had gotten its independence just 1 year before this. And Lumumba and Nkrumah become friends. They exchange ideas, and Lumumba is exposed to the ideas of Pan-Africanism, or the idea that all of Africa has to fight for its liberation, as opposed to one or the other nation fighting alone. And so Nkrumah develops his political program, and his political program is really a program of unity, because at the time there are many political parties, but they're all based on ethnicity, they're based on tribalism, and Lumumba gives the message that what we need is really a people's movement where the people identify with being Congolese, with being African, not with narrow ethnic and tribal divisions, but with the whole of Africa. And so he works among the people, he speaks to the people about these ideas, and of course he has many compatriots in the struggle. These are just some pictures of how the struggle took place. So there's mounting pressure on Belgium, and in 1960 Belgium actually grants independence to the Congo. And Lumumba, at the independence speech, Lumumba is made prime minister, while another man called Kasavubu is made president. And actually, at the independence ceremony, Lumumba is not supposed to speak, but he does because he wants to set the record straight. And he says, no Congolese can ever forget that we have gained our independence through struggle, a daily persistent idealistic struggle in which we were undaunted by suffering, sacrifice, nor by the bloodshed by our peoples. So he's really a people's person. He emerges organically from the people of the Congo. But of course, right after they're given independence, there's a crisis in the Congo. Because the Belgians do not leave a stable state, and there's a secessionist movement in the richest part of the Congo, which is called Katanga, and the leaders of the secession are supported by the Belgian forces. So, on the other hand, there's also mutiny in the army. So the Belgian generals of the army don't want to give up control, so the Congolese mutiny. And in this situation, Lumumba, this young prime minister, he approaches the UN. And so this is a picture of Lumumba at the UN at a press conference. And his appeal to the UN is really to send in their forces to stabilize the Congo, to support his government. And he primarily ends up dealing with the Secretary General of the UN at the time, this man called Dag Hammarskjöld. And it's a difficult relationship because Dag Hammarskjöld, instead of recognizing the legitimacy of Lumumba's government when he is elected prime minister, he decides to negotiate with the secessionists. And so, and the secessionists, of course, are supported by the Belgians because Belgium wants to retain control on this region of Katanga. So this is actually a picture of the Shombe, who was a leader of the secessionist movement. Along, you can see on the right-hand side of the picture, Dag Hammarskjöld. And the Congo really becomes a test case for the UN. And I think it shows the failure of the UN to handle this crisis. And after this, there's a coup against Lumumba. He's placed under house arrest, and the person who carries out the coup is a military general by the name of Mobutu, who then went on to rule the Congo for the next 32 years in a dictatorship. But Lumumba is trying to escape house arrest, and we'll show you those images here. So these are the iconic pictures of when Lumumba is captured by Mobutu's forces, and he is tortured, he is beaten up brutally, and then at some point taken to the region which has seceded in the Katanga and killed. And in fact, they're afraid that the people will rebel if his body is found, so they dissolve his body in sulfuric acid. And it's only 2 years ago that the Belgian government gave back his tooth to the Congolese government after so many years of keeping it. So, there is this story of this young African revolutionary, and he's only 35 years old when he's murdered. And when the news gets out that he's been killed, there are protests all over the world because people mourn him, they know of his name, and there's anger at the Belgian. And now it's known that the CIA was involved. There's anger at the Western forces who were responsible for this. So this is a picture of protests that were held in Delhi under the leadership of Aruna Asaf Ali, who galvanized the Congress to hold this protest. And the slogans say, Belgian imperialism, down with the Belgian imperialism, long live Lumumba, break diplomatic relations with Belgium. And there were also protests all across Africa. So this is a picture of the protests that were held in Accra, Ghana. And the signs read, you killed Lumumba, we know. Nkrumah shall reign forever.
After Lumumba is assassinated, there is effort to control the secessionist movement in the Congo, and there are actually many Indians involved in the whole Congo crisis. One of them is Rajeshwar Dayal, who is who goes there as he's an Indian diplomat, but he leads the UN mission in the Congo, and he reaches the Congo just as Lumumba, pretty much just as Lumumba is captured, and he plays a very important role there, and he gives these honest reports, but he is unfortunately the Americans turn against Dayal, Mobutu turns against Dayal, and so he is eventually he has to leave. But then the Indian army goes into the Congo. It's little known, but close to many thousands of Indian soldiers, close to 10,000 Indian soldiers went into the Congo and fought against the secessionist forces in Katanga, and they fought against the Belgian forces in Katanga.
So the rest of this room is dedicated to Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first president of Ghana. Ghana was the first sub-Saharan nation, African nation, to gain its independence. And Nkrumah studied the Indian movement and employed the methods of civil disobedience in his own struggle. They called it positive action. So these are just some pictures of the struggle in Ghana. And then next to it, you see a picture of Nkrumah giving his Independence Day speech. And you can see that they're wearing Gandhi caps. And that's because those were the caps that were worn in British prisons. And for them it really symbolized that they were not here as kings or rulers, but really the oppressed, the ones who had been imprisoned, who are now taking power on behalf of the people. But of course, Nkrumah also plays this huge role on the world stage in relationship with Nehru, and Nehru and Nkrumah were very close. And this is a picture of the Bandung Five, the five leaders who led the non-aligned movement. So you have Nehru of India, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Nasser of Egypt, Sukarno of Indonesia, and Tito of Yugoslavia. And the Bandung Conference really becomes this platform for Afro-Asia to come together for the first time to talk independently of the West. And Nkrumah, of course, is the face of Africa in all of this. And Nkrumah was as I said, very close to Nehru. He visited India in 1959. And in his trip, he visited many scientific institutes. He visited factories to see how development in India was taking place. So you can see quickly some of those pictures. This is actually a picture in Bangalore. But then, like the story of other African nations, Nkrumah is also removed from power in a coup when he is visiting China. And he had to spend the rest of his life in exile outside of Ghana, in Guinea. And we feel that this is really the story of Africa. All of this heroic leadership that comes up through people's struggle, but then is cut short in assassinations and coups. And this is a picture of Nkrumah when he hears news of the coup.
So this section is about the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa. In many ways, this is one of the longest and one of the most evolved struggles in Africa. And it really starts in some ways with Gandhiji's campaign. Gandhiji spent 21 years in South Africa, and he was the Natal Indian Congress was founded in 1894, and in many ways set the basis for how political organizations in South Africa henceforth functioned. Then this here is a picture of Vijay Lakshmi Pandit addressing the UN General Assembly in 1946. Even before India became independent, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, as part of the provisional government, went and addressed the UN, and she spoke against the atrocities in South Africa and got a lot of applause. India broke off its diplomatic relations with South Africa in 1946. There was a big Indian community in South Africa. This is a picture of Durban, where these Indians had come in either as indentured labor, in some cases possibly as slaves, but also as traders. And this is a picture of Mother India, the famous movie, in 1958. Many Indians in South Africa played a big role in the South African struggle. We wanted to highlight them. This is a picture of Yusuf Dadu, a doctor who played an important role in the anti-apartheid struggle, and particularly in uniting Indians and Africans in the struggle against racism and apartheid in South Africa. Another Indian here is Monty Naikar, and Naikar, Dadu, and an African, A.B. Shuma, who then led the African National Congress, signed this historic Three Doctors Pact in 1947, which really called for a united struggle against racism. Dadu and Naikar are also close to Nehru and Gandhi. But this section is really dedicated to Oliver Tambo, this heroic figure, really the father of the revolution in South Africa, and we'll cover more about him in the later section. But we have some photographs of how apartheid was in South Africa. Here you can see a white man hitting an African boy who's begging on the streets. And a second photo really shows the segregation. You have a European section, a white section, and then a black section in the railway station. And blacks were not allowed to travel freely in their own country because of this kind of segregation and apartheidization in South Africa. But there was this campaign, and the three young leaders of the African National Congress who emerged were Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, and Walter Sisulu. And they provided leadership for this movement. And this is a defiance campaign that happened in 1949 because of these leaders pushed for a more radical program. And it's like a satyagraha. So in many ways, our Indian freedom struggle inspired the kind of campaign that happened in South Africa. But the apartheid government cracked down on these campaigns. And there was a treason trial where many of these leaders were tried. And you can see among the leaders who were tried, there are both Africans and Indians in this treason trial. By 1955, the struggle had really developed, and there was a mass movement in South Africa under the African National Congress. It was a multiracial movement which was really fighting against this apartheid system, and they had this freedom charter. All shall enjoy equal human rights. The people shall govern. And the African National Congress movement really built up. But then the apartheid state cracked down on them. And in 1960, there was the Sharpeville massacre, where unarmed protesters were shot upon by the police, and many people were killed. The ANC was banned soon after this Sharpeville massacre. Oliver Tambo was deputed to help build worldwide support for the anti-apartheid movement. And here he's arriving in this picture in Tanzania. And you can see there's a woman behind him, an Indian woman, Frene Jinwala, who helped him obtain travel documents. And the Indian government actually helped Oliver Tambo get travel documents so that he could travel around and get support for the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. By this time, this is a meeting of Oliver Tambo with Nelson Mandela, and by this time the leadership decided that they need a military wing, and so the military wing called a Spear of the Nation in translation was formed, and that they could no longer just have a non-violent movement. But then Mandela and Sisulu were arrested, they were given life imprisonment, and so it really fell upon Oliver Tambo, and who in this famous Morogoro conference in 1969 said, we have to close ranks, we have to intensify the struggle. In the international campaign against apartheid, Oliver Tambo worked very closely with E.S. Reddy, who we mentioned earlier, and they participated together in having boycotts, on sports, on cultural boycotts, economic boycotts, and the two of them were like friends. And here is a picture of Oliver Tambo addressing the Special Committee Against Apartheid, which E.S. Reddy was heading. And Reddy would really compare Oliver Tambo to our own freedom struggle and our leaders of our own freedom struggle. Another person who was very close to the South African movement was Romesh Chandra, shown here, who was the president of the World Peace Council. And Romesh Chandra was also shaped by a freedom struggle and the communist movement in India. Many of the South African leaders became members of the World Peace Council, including Yusuf Dadu, who we saw earlier, and Oliver Tambo. And then finally, this is just to show, a little bit more of the international movement. This is a conference of trade unions against apartheid, and this is a photo of Winnie Mandela. Because Nelson Mandela was in prison, often it fell upon Winnie Mandela to lead the struggle in South Africa, which she did, even though she was imprisoned several times and brutalized. And she's another heroic figure of this great anti-apartheid movement in
in South Africa?
So the fourth struggle we wanted to cover in this exhibition is of Guinea-Bissau. Guinea-Bissau is a very small country, but really it was put on the map by its leadership, which was, one of which was Amilcar Cabral. And Amilcar Cabral was trained as an agronomist, so he traveled the country, meeting people, peasants in all parts of Guinea-Bissau. And Guinea-Bissau actually had a guerrilla struggle. So it was an armed struggle against colonialism. The next picture is actually a picture of Amilcar Cabral with Fidel Castro of Cuba. And we wanted to include this because Cuba actually played a huge role in the African liberation movements. And Cuban doctors were sent to many parts of Africa. In Angola, Cubans fought in the army against the racist regime. The next picture is actually a picture of the liberated zones in Guinea-Bissau, which were established when the guerrilla forces won land. And so this is a picture of an education camp. The next picture is a picture of a marketplace, a people's market in the liberated zones.
Okay, so I'll stop the video here. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll now turn it over to Professor Subhachandran to conduct the next part of this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Raju. Let me start with thank you note to you and your colleagues there at the center there, especially Venkatesh, for agreeing to co-host this with our the institute, especially the Africa Studies Area Studies program at the institute. What I'll do is in the next couple of minutes, I'll just say a few words about what we are doing at the Institute on Africa and how what you have done will be of great help if we can combine forces on this. At the Institute, we have area studies on Africa. We have a few scholars working on Africa. I have Anna Maria Joseph. She coordinates the Africa Studies program. She'll be coming at the end of the panel discussion by the young scholars. She also helps us with publishing our monthly, the Africa Monitor. We have a few scholars from different institutions helping us with this Africa studies. It is more of a academic initiative on contemporary politics, contemporary conflicts in Africa. So what you have done is taking us through the history. So the exhibition and the introduction that you have given us has given us an opportunity for us to look at Africa from a historical prism, which we have not been doing at the Institute in our Africa studies. We are just focused mostly on what is happening in Africa in terms of politics and what is happening. The focus is more on what is the East part. But what you have done is to take us through the history and also take us through the contribution that the leadership has made. And you also looked at what happened during the 50s and the 60s. So the politics of the 50s and 60s in Africa is just not the politics of 50s and 60s. It's the politics of decolonization, the birth of the global South, the coming together of non-aligned movement. So many things came together during this period, and Africa is the epicenter. On the one side, Asia, on one side, Latin America. So what you have done now is has helped us to look through the history. Maybe what I would suggest further, thank you again, to you and Venkatesh for agreeing to do this along with the young scholars and especially online. What we can do further is if there is a bit of stamina in the center, why don't we take this to Chennai, Mysore, Pondicherry? We spend a day with them and ask them to join us. This is just an idea. We can since you have the photos with you, I think this is something that is doable. And I have Ramya from Miss Ramya from the history department. She heads the history department in Patrice Lumumba College. Maybe we can start with that. I can ask them whether they can host this exhibition in Patrice Lumumba College. and we can do what we are doing online there. With that note, let me turn to my young team. There are four scholars from two different institutions today, from Stella Marie Chennai and Madras Christian College. Those are joining online. And we have Anna Maria Joseph. She will come at the end. She coordinates the Africa Studies program at the Institute. Maybe first I'll invite Preeta to talk to us on Lumumba. Preeta, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Before I begin, first of all, thank you so much to the Indian Institute of World Culture team for the virtual tour and for hosting us here today. I have a presentation. Just give me a minute. I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah.
Can someone confirm?
You can make it full screen, Preeti.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Go ahead. Preeti, go ahead.
Yes, sir. As we honor the life and legacy of Patrice Lumumba today here, a towering figure in the African freedom struggle and a symbol of the Pan-African unity, along with the leaders that we just saw, Nkrumah, Amilcar Cabral, and Oliver Tambo. I'm happy to set the stage by first reflecting on Lumumba's mark on Congo, Africa, and the global fight against colonialism. As we'll move forward, we'll see that his story is not just one of courage and sacrifice, but also a call which reflects the democratic aspirations of the formerly colonized people and a vision that resonates deeply with the shared history of both India and Africa. And this is going to be a recap of what we just seen in the video, but more.
Preeti, is there an issue? Okay, let it take time. Maybe I'll invite Santhya now until that time. Santhya, you are ready?
Yes, sir. I'm ready. I'll
Santhya,
share
she's
my.
the youngest in this group today. She's an undergrad student in Christian College, Chennai. Santhya, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I would also like to thank the Indian Institute of World Culture for taking us virtually for the art exhibition. I'll share my screen quickly. Yeah. So good evening, everybody. I am going to present on Kwame Nkrumah. He is a visionary leader who liberated his country, Ghana, from British colonial rule in 1957, and he dreamt of uniting Africa. His ideas of freedom, true independence, and Pan-African unity spread across the continent during the post-colonial era and are still very much relevant today. And I find it a personal pride to talk about him because from reading about him on textbooks on chapters of non-alignment movement to now celebrating him, it is a great privilege. Moving on to my presentation, this is going to be the flow of my presentation. I'll discuss about his life, his achievements, and his legacy. First, touching upon his life, he was born in 1909. He attended a prestigious Catholic school called Achimota College. He was a good student of religion, but he wanted to become a priest. But as he got older, he was intrigued by the world of politics. After graduating from Achimota, he traveled to the US and attended Lincoln University in Pennsylvania in 1935. He also attended a master's degree after graduating in 1939. The period was pivotal in Kwame's life because he read a lot and he was also influenced by socialist literature, especially the works of Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, and Marcus Garvey. He became the president of the African Students Organization of the US and Canada. He left the US in May 1945 and went to England, where he organized the Fifth Pan African Congress in Manchester. So, even early in his life, he was very much into organizing and mobilizing students for a cause. Meanwhile, in Ghana, which was then a British colony known as the Gold Coast, the United Gold Coast Convention had been formed. It was first of its kind party because it was working towards self-government by constitutional means. Nkrumah was invited to be the UGCC's general secretary when he returned home in late 1947. Protests and riots calling for independence made Nkrumah a target for British colonial government. He was briefly arrested in February 1948 alongside with other leaders of UGCC. A split eventually occurred in this party, and in 1949, that led to the formation of new convention, People's Party, by Nkrumah. He was very committed to a program of immediate self-government. Starting in 1950, Kwame Nkrumah pushed for a campaign of positive action with non-violent protests, strikes, and a boycott of British colonial authorities and businesses, as we saw in the virtual tour. Much of a similarity with the civil disobedience movement that happened, which was spearheaded by Gandhi and happened in India. Nkrumah was again arrested and sentenced to 1 year in prison. In February 1951, the country had its first general election. It was a done deal for the vastly popular CPP, and he was elected to parliament. And in 1952, he became the first prime minister of Ghana. In 1957, Ghana declared its independence, the first country situated south of Sahara Desert, the first African country to gain independence. In 1960, Nkrumah was elected as the president of Ghana. Early in 1964, Ghana was officially designated as a one-party state, which means Nkrumah as the president for life for both the nation and the party. In February 1966, Nkrumah was on a state visit to North Vietnam and China. Meanwhile, the army and the police in Ghana seized power. So because of this coup, he had to flee and seek asylum in Guinea. He died of cancer in Bucharest, Romania in 1972. Moving to his achievements and contribution, I have divided into two slides, one focusing on his domestic achievements and one on his external achievements. First point would deal with economy. Economically speaking, at the beginning of his tenure, he was very successful. Nkrumah expanded the private sector, especially in terms of forestry, fishery, and cattle breeding. He doubled the production of cocoa, which was Ghana's main export. He also, under his tenure, gold exploitation was carried out more effectively. He pushed for rapid industrialization and constructed a dam on the upper Volta River, which provides water for irrigation and hydroelectric power. Government funds were also provided for village projects in which local people built schools and roads. Second, dealing with energy, he had a major focus on energy projects because he saw it as a means to achieve true economic independence. He initiated Ghana's nuclear reactor project in 1961. He also created the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission in 1963. In 1964, he laid the first stone for the construction of an atomic energy facility. Third, talking about media and culture, he also gave emphasis on this regard. He opened the Ghana Museum, the Arts Council of Ghana, the Ghana Film Corporation. He also created Ghana's new news agency, the Ghanaian Times, and the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. He also established an external service to broadcast it in English, French, Arabic, Swahili, Portuguese, and Hausa. we can see how he stressed so much on soft power back in 1960s in itself. Fourth point deals with Pan-African culture in Ghana. Nkrumah's government was primarily nationalist and socialist. While in power, Nkrumah pushed for the Africanization of civil service, introduced free education, healthcare, and built a strong national education system by challenging the Eurocentrism and white supremacy, which was embedded in British textbooks and cultural institutions. He opposed and weakened tribalism within the country to promote loyalty to the identity of an African and promoted an pan-African culture, calling for international libraries and cooperative efforts to study culture and history. So, moving to his external achievements and contributions, first one deals with Pan-African unity. He said that we would create an African personality and identity. So he was sought to achieve Pan African unity and harmony through deep political, economic, and in military integration of the continent. He created several new international organizations and organized multiple conferences, including Pan African People's Conference, an All African Trade Union, Conference for African Women, and security coordination over Algeria, South Africa, and West Africa. Pictures of these were also shown in the video. He withdrew Ghana from colonial organizations such as the West Africa Airways Corporation, the West African Currency Board, and the West African Court of Appeal. In 1960, also negotiated for the creation of a union of African states. So we can see how he was actively involving internationally to promote the ideology against imperialism. The second point deals with Organization of African Unity. Nkrumah was the founding father of the Organization of African Unity in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. When this was formed, it was joined by 32 African countries. They had aimed for full military, economic, and political integration with six key goals, like to eradicate colonialism, to intensify cooperation, and to defend sovereignty, and also to ensure human rights for all Africans, and to improve their standard of living, and to also settle arguments and disputes between the member states. And my third point deals with Nkrumah and the non-alignment
Yeah,
movement.
you have to
This was
conclude now. Yeah,
Yes,
time
sir.
constraint.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This was also again discussed in the video. He was one of the founding fathers of an non-alignment movement. He strongly supported the idea of remaining independent from both Western and Eastern blocs during the Cold War. He also gave birth to the Nkrumah-ism, which is a pan-African socialist theory which aims at adapting Marxist and Leninist theory to the social context of the African continent. Third, talking about is legacy. Have divided into 6 points. African Unity, previously I discussed about the Organization of African Unity that laid the groundwork for the African United, which was later established in 2002. Talking about infrastructure, the Ghana's Volta River project that he initiated still powers a significant portion of the country's electricity and aluminum industry. There were many universities named after him, like the Kwame Nkrumah University and the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. There are many monuments that he built and built to remember him, like the Black Star Square and the Kwame Nkrumah Mausoleum. Fifth, the Kwame Nkrumah Pan African Intellectual and Cultural Festival celebrates his ideas across generation, and also an award for excellence in science and innovation in Africa is named in his honor to promote African-led research and knowledge production. Um, this is the Black Star Square, and this is a monument built after him. This is the celebration of the intellectual and cultural festival. To conclude, I'd like to say that he survived 5 assassination attempts and was removed from power by a military coup. But even though he died in 1972, he left a plethora of development, numerous publications, and an eternal legacy. Like the saying goes, Nkrumah never dies, because his ideological influence and the development that he initiated would always stay.
Yeah.
So with that, I'd
Thank
like to
you,
thank.
Nandria. With that note, let's thank you. You talked about the life, contribution, and the legacy. Now let's move to the next one. Preeti, are you there, or should we go to Aparna?
Sir, I'll go after Aparna.
Okay. Aparna. Aparna is also an undergrad student from Christian College Department of Political Science. Aparna, over to you.
Thank you, sir.
Aparna, take care of the watch. Yeah, 6 to 7 minutes. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I thank Mias and Indian Institute of World Culture for giving me this opportunity. So today I will be presenting on Tambo's life, achievement, and legacy through my presentation titled Tambo, Introduction of the Struggle, Strategist in Exile. It was 1960. South Africa was in flames after the Sharpeville massacre, where 69 people were killed by police during a peaceful protest against the PASCO. The apartheid regime responded by banning the African National Congress, arresting its leaders, and driving political resistance underground. Tambo was not in prison, but he was in danger. The ANC knew that if he stayed, he would either be jailed or silenced. So they made a critical decision, send him to exile to be the movement's voice to them. In the dead of night, Tambo kissed his wife Adelaide and children goodbye, not knowing if he would ever return. He crossed the borderland to Botswana land, which we now call Botswana, and began a journey that would last over 30 years in exile. With no army, no territory, and no safe home, he set up ANC missions across Africa, Europe, and Americas. He walked into foreign capitals, meeting with presidents, diplomats, and activists, pleading, persuading, and organizing. While Mandela was silenced on Robben Island, Tambo became the face and voice of the liberation movement. He once said, "It is our responsibility to break down barriers of division and create a country where there will be neither whites or blacks, just South Africans." That journey in 1960, that one night of sacrifice, became a lifetime of leadership. Without Tambo's courage to lead, there might not have been an ANC too. So, in this presentation, I will be walking you guys through the early life and education, his rise in ANC, early activism, his 30 years of exile, Tambo's leadership and moral integrity, his political vision, and his retirement next. Oliver Reginald Kaisara Tambo was born on 27 October 1970 in the rural village of Kantoro near Botswana in the Eastern Cape. He grew up in a devout Christian and Xhosa-speaking household and quickly proved himself an exceptional student. After completing school at St. Peter's College in Johannesburg, he studied mathematics and physics in Fort Hare University. There he met Nelson Mandela, and in 1940, both were expelled for leading a student strike demanding democratic students' representation and challenging the university's authoritarian policies. This was Tambo's first act of political resistance. After leaving Fort Hare, he worked as a teacher before training as a lawyer. In 1952, he co-founded South Africa's first black movement, Mandela and Tambo Art. The firm became a lifeline for black South Africans facing past law violations, labor exploitation, land removal, and police brutality. At a time when apartheid courts rarely treated black people fairly, Tambo and Mandela used law as a tool of defiance and defense. In 1944, Tambo joined Mandela, Walter Sisulu, and Alon Lembede to establish the African National Congress Youth League. The Youth League was created to breathe new life into ANC, which many young leaders felt had become too cautious and elite-driven. The Youth League called for mass mobilization, African nationalism, and non-compromising resistance to white domination. In 1952, Tambo helped to organize the Defiance Campaign, South Africa's first large-scale non-violent resistance movement against apartheid law, and over 8,000 volunteers participated by deliberately defying the resistance such as entering white-only facilities and ignoring passports. In 1955, he played a key role in the Congress of People in Clifton, where Freedom Charter was allowed. The charter became the ideological backbone of ANC, and it famously proclaimed South Africa belongs to all, believe in it, black and white. It demanded universal suffrage, non-racial democracy, economic redistribution, and human rights law. Let's move to his 30 years of exile. This majorly covers his achievement. After the Sharpeville massacre in March 1960, the apartheid government banned ANC and arrested many of its leaders. Recognizing Tambo's freedom was at risk, ANC decided that he must leave the country and take the struggle to international stage. In 1960, Tambo began his exile and redefined the role of diplomacy in liberation. He set up ANC foreign mission in African countries such as Tanzania, Algeria, Zambia, and Ghana. He expanded the movement to Soviet Union, UK, Sweden, Canada, US, and the Caribbean. One of his most important missions was to Soviet Union in the early 1960s, where he negotiated arms, military training, and logistical support for ANC's armed wing named Infoto VCSW, which translates to the Sphere of Nation. It was launched in 1961 as a response to the increasing brutality of apartheid rule. Tambo, though not a military man, supported the armed struggle as a last resort after the peaceful protests had been violently suppressed. But this decision also brought ideological challenges. Within ANC, among its allies, there were debates about whether the violence would undermine the movement's moral standing. And coming to his leadership and moral integrity, the exile was not easy. Tambo faced enormous internal pressure. Ideologically, the ANC was split between Marxist, African nationalists, and moderates. Conditions in training camps, particularly in Angola and Zambia, were harsh, under-resourced, and crowded. Many young fighters, radicalized by the 1976 Soweto uprising, grew impatient and frustrated by the slow-paced progress and limited combat opportunities. He consistently opposed tribalism and ethnic division, urging ANC members to reject apartheid classification of people in Zulu, Xhosa, Swana, and so on. He warned against the division, saying, "Beware the wedge tribals, we are one people, one nation." In 1980s, when serious reports emerged of human rights violation within ANC camp, such as detention and mistreatment of suspected spies, Tambo did something very few leaders in the armed resistance have done. He initiated an independent inquiry, restored permission to investigate abuse and implement reforms. And let's move to his political vision. Tambo understood that the liberation was not the final. It was a step toward democratic nation building. He believed that ANC must not only fight apartheid, but also prepare to govern a free South Africa. In exile, he promoted education as a revolutionary tool. The ANC established schools in Tanzania to educate young exiles in both academics and political ethics. He oversaw the development of ANC political policy units that drafted proposals on constitutional law, economic justice, and land reforms. In 1988, ANC released constitutional guidelines for democratic South Africa, and these guidelines laid out key principles such as Bill of Rights, non-racial citizenship, separation of powers, and multi-party democracy. Tambo also quietly supported dialogue with progressive white South Africans, including academics, clergy, and businessmen, to lay foundation for the negotiation that would begin in the early 90s. While preparing for fight, he was also preparing the country for peace. And in 1991, after 3 decades of exile, Tambo returned to South Africa on the brink of war. He had suffered a stroke in 1989, which left him partially disabled. Recognizing the need for strong leadership in the negotiation ahead, he stepped aside and supported Mandela's election as ANC president. And he remained politically active and continued to advocate for unity and ethical leadership. But on 24th April 1993, he passed away just 1 year before the country's first democratic election. His legacy is honored to institutions that bear his name, including OR Tambo International Airport, one of Africa's busiest. The South African government also created the Order of Companions of OR Tambo to honor the fallen allies of the struggle. To conclude, OR localized the struggle. In tireless diplomacy, he transformed the apartheid from a national crisis to an international moral outrage. Secondly, he preserved the ANC unity and credibility. For 30 years in exile, he navigated the ideological conflicts, military tension, and global politics without fracturing the movement. Thirdly, he prepared South Africa for freedom. His foresight enabled ANC to transition from the liberation movement into a government building grounded in democratic principles. So that's all from my part. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna. That's Aparna Nair from Christian College, Chennai. Now let's move to the third intervention. We'll get back to Preeti on Lumumba. Preeti, over to you.
So sorry everyone for the initial glitch. I'll request Brighty to present my slides, please.
We'll keep it around 7 minutes, Preeti.
Yes, sir.
Just a second, Rita. Is this screen visible to you?
It's getting visible. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's great. Thanks, Preeti. So in today's presentation on Lumumba, we'll be looking at his early life, and then we'll go on to how he enters politics, his prime ministership, and the Congo crisis, and his legacy. Next slide, please. Lumumba was born on July 2nd, 1925, in a small village in the Kasai province in the Belgian Congo. He was born to a modest peasant family. Although he was limited by financial constraints, he received only primary education. But he goes on to take up roles of a postal clerk and later an accountant. And during these years, we see Lumumba's writings in Congolese journals, which reveal his growing awareness of colonial injustices, which lays the foundation for his political journey ahead. During this time, we also see through Lumumba's writings of his belief in African self-governance, which become cornerstone for his vision. Next slide, please. Looking at Lumumba's entry to the politics in 1955, we see Lumumba's leadership in Congolese trade union and his brief affiliation with the Belgian Liberal Party. This marks his entry to the political activism. We see a pivotal moment in Lumumba's journey in 1956 when he gets arrested on charges of embezzlement. As he emerges from these charges in 1957, we see a Lumumba with his resolve deepened for his vision for Africa. So in 1958, he co-founds the Movement National Congolais (MNC), the first nationwide political party in Congo. Which emphasizes on national unity over ethnic or regional divisions, which we see among his other rivals. So the MNC specifically focuses on Congo's unitary. And around the same, next slide, please. In the same year, we also see Lumumba taking part in the All-African People's Conference, which we also saw in the video, which was hosted by Nkrumah. Here we see Lumumba embracing Pan-Africanism. And this encounter solidifies Lumumba's idea of an African nationality and looking at united Congo within the broader African solidarity. Next slide, please. This is an excerpt from Lumumba's speech, which is famously known as the Congolese speech that he delivers at the All-African People's Conference. Here, I'll just read out the excerpt to reflect on Lumumba's idea for Africa. He says, "This historical conference, which puts us in contact with experienced political figures from all the African countries and from all over the world, reveals one thing to us. Despite the boundaries that separate us, despite our ethnic differences, we have the same awareness, the same soul plunged day and night in anguish, the same anxious desire to make this African continent a free and happy continent, and that has rid itself of unrest and of fear and any sort of colonialist domination." Through this quote, we see Lumumba's idea for Africa, wherein he sees a united Pan-African nation. Next slide, please. As we move forward, we see Lumumba's taking up his role as the first prime minister of Congo. In 1960, when the MNC's boycott of Belgian orchestrated local elections leads to Lumumba's imprisonment, and then he soon after gets released to attend the Brussels Roundtable Conference, wherein he negotiates Congo's independence, which is set for June 13, 1960. The MNC's sweeping electoral victory made Lumumba the first prime minister at the age of 35. And in his Independence Day speech, we see his rejection of colonial humiliation, wherein we see the quote that we shall show the world what the black man can do when working in liberty, and we shall make the Congo the pride of Africa. This shows Lumumba's vision for Congolese dignity. And this also, again, reasserts his commitment to a unified Congo and rejection of ethnic fragmentation. Next slide, please. However, we see that Lumumba's legacy gets cut short with the event of Congo's crisis, which erupts soon after the independence, wherein the army mutiny and the Belgian-backed secession of Katanga, which is a mineral-rich province, takes place. Facing an untrained army and a fragile administration, Lumumba seeks United Nations support to expel Belgian troops and quell the secession. The UN hesitates, so he turns to the Soviet Union for logistical aid. This decision sort of alarms the Western powers, and given the Cold War tensions as well. As we move forward, we see that on September 5, 1960, President Kasavubu dismisses Lumumba, and a coup by the colonel Joseph Mobutu follows, wherein Lumumba escapes from his house arrest. However, him along with his associates were executed in Katanga under Belgian supervision. As we saw on the video as well, their bodies were dissolved in acid to erase any evidence of the crime that took place. And as recently as 2022, we see that only a single were returned to his family, which remains a symbol of his martyr. Next slide, please. I'll conclude with Lumumba's legacy. What we see here is Lumumba's contribution to Africa's decolonization. He championed a unitary Congo, and his advocacy for positive neutralism is evident from the quotes that we see and his speeches as well. He emphasized African values over any imported ideologies. His Pan-African vision, which he got inspired by through other significant leaders like Nkrumah, sought continental unity to counter neocolonialism. His enduring legacy became a symbol for Congolese nationalism and inspired anti-colonial movements globally. Lumumba's dedication to Pan-Africanism remains a foundational aspect of modern African political discourse even today. I'll conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Preeti. Now let's move to the fourth intervention by Brighter. Over to you. Better keep it to 7 minutes.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Please just give me a minute to share my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yep. Go ahead.
Just a second. Good evening, everyone. So my presentation today will be on Amilcar Cabral, the revolutionary without borders and the voice of the Lusophone African. So now, to speak about Amilcar Cabral just as a revolutionary would be insufficient, because he excelled himself in as an agronomist, a poet, a Marxist theorist, and so much more. We'll be covering 3 areas in this presentation today: the life and times of Amilcar Cabral, the path of his revolution and the contributions he made, the assassination and the enduring legacy. To begin with, Amilcar Lopez da Costa Cabral was born on September 12, 1924 in Bafata, which was a part of the Portuguese Guinea, and that is now Guinea-Bissau. And at the age, Cabral moved to Cape Verde, where first to Santa Catarina and later to Minedolo on Sao Vicente. Now, the fundamental aspects about the revolution that Cabral led was his own dual identity, both as being born in Guinea-Bissau, as well as his parental heritage towards Cape Verde. And the nationalistic principles that he put forth was also of a unified liberation of both these regions, although they were miles apart. And the Pan-Africanism that he propounded was also of the same, where the collective identity of Africa was to be upheld, and the greater evil was the colonialism that oppressed all regions equally. His childhood was framed by drought and famine that deeply shaped his experiences and exposed him to the brutal inefficiencies of the Portuguese colonial rule, and which prioritized the extraction of human welfare, planting the seeds of his anti-colonial conscience. He was extremely well educated, and he won a very illustrious scholarship in 1945, which allowed him to study agronomy at the Instituto Superior de Agronomia in Lisbon in Portugal. And it is during this time at his study at this institute, under the dictatorship of Antonio de Oliveira, that his burgeoning nationalism and motivations against the imperial government truly took shape. While he was in Lisbon, Cabral co-founded the Centro de Estudios Africanos, which was under the banner of which he communicated with key figures of Angolan and Mozambique liberation, which also set start his journey as a revolutionary for his own country. And in 1952, Cabral returned to Portuguese Guinea working for the Colonial Agriculture and Forestry Services and conducted the agricultural census of 1953. This agricultural census of 1953 was foundational in establishing his ideals as a revolutionary because it helped him travel extensively across the region to interact at the grassroots level with the people. And this was fundamental to his ideology that revolution should begin at a grassroots level. And the travel and interactions also familiarized him with the most rural realities of the region and what the land required for a revolution to take shape, and also motivated and helped his guerrilla strategies that he later employed in his revolutions. In 1955, he moved to Angola, and in 1956, he co-founded the African Party of Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, PAIGC. And the PAIGC aimed to unite Guinea and Bissau and Cape Verde in a dual liberation struggle, reflecting Cabral's vision of a shared anti-colonial history. According to Cabral, national liberation is a holistic process encompassing political independence, cultural reclamation, and economic self-sufficiency. And it is very evident in one of his seminal concepts of returning to the source, where he argued that the colonized elites must reconnect with indigenous cultures to forge a unified national identity, and one that countered the alienation that was imposed by colonial education and assimilation. And during this travel and survey conducted that he carried out in 1953, the foremost questions that he raised was what was the relationship between agricultural production and the country's social structure, which ethnic groups were involved in the production of specific crops, and how much more detail could his senses gather on these topics and further deepen his understanding of his own world. Now, about the path to his revolutions and his contributions. Cabral viewed culture as a cornerstone to national liberation and cultural identity, as a dynamic force of uniting people under a colonial oppression. He constantly voiced his need to bring back the African culture and to return to the cultural past that was stolen by the colonial oppression, and to reclaim the past in order to overcome said oppression. And as a PAIGC General Secretary, he orchestrated guerrilla wars against the Portuguese forces starting in 1963, which was one of the most effective anti-colonial campaigns in Africa. By the late 1960s, PAIGC controlled nearly two-thirds of Guinea-Bissau, establishing liberated zones. And these liberated zones are one of the most cornerstones to the entire process of the revolution that he led, because these liberated zones lying outside the control of Portuguese control were included mechanisms of self-governance such as schools, hospitals, and people's stores to demonstrate the viability of self-governance and independence, which solidified the idea of independence within the people and further led the revolution going forward. And in 1972, Cabral also oversaw the creation of the Guinean People's National Assembly in Bo, and a proto-parliament that laid the groundwork for independence. As the PIGC General Secretary, he did so much more. And beyond Guinea-Bissau, Cabral also co-founded the Conference of National Organizations of Portuguese Colonies, uh, Colonies, CONCP, in 1961, which fostered solidarity among the Lusophone liberation movements and played a key role in establishing the Angola MPLA in 1956. And this was one of the major steps in unifying the liberation movements across the region. The assassination and enduring legacy of Cabral. On 20th January 1973, Cabral was unfortunately assassinated outside his home in Conakry in Guinea by Incencio Kani, a disgruntled PAIGC member. And this happened, unfortunately, before he could fulfill his dream of seeing a united liberation movement of the two regions. And although it is alleged that the assassination was a plot involving the Portuguese agents. The assassination stemmed from the internal tensions, particularly between Bissau Guinean fighters and Cape Verdon leaders within the PAIGC, and which was exacerbated by the colonial divide and rule tactics, where the Bissau Guinean fighters believed that had a inclination that Cape Verde members were taking up more space and more agency within the party itself. And Cabral, interestingly, had foreseen such risks, noting that if anyone is going to hurt me, it is he who is here among us. And prior to his death, he had created a very robust system within the PAIGC, that his death did not end the process that he had started and led for so many years. PAIGC's robust structure built under his leadership ensured its continuity, and Astrides Pereira assumed leadership, and the movement intensified its efforts, declaring Guinea-Bissau independent on September 24th, 1973. And Portugal recognized its independence in 1974, following the Carnation revolutions and the democratic uprising in Lisbon, partly triggered by the colonial wars, including Cabral's campaigns. However, Cape Verde achieved independence in 1975, though the envisioned union of Guinea-Bissau faltered due to the ethnic and political divisions between the two regions, culminating in the 1980 coup, which against Louis Cabral, who was also Cabral's brother, and the 1980 coup dethroned him. And this dethroning of this coup against Louis Cabral was referred to as Cabral's second death, very popularly, because it was also the death of a very big dream that he had envisioned throughout his life. However, in his enduring legacy, in Guinea-Bissau, PAIGC remains a major political force, and the National People's Assembly declared 2024 as the year of Amilcar Cabral's centenary, reflecting his enduring national significance. And his national significance and the message that he carried forward is not limited merely to his national identity, but also carried forward the Pan-African identity that became that he became one of the faces for. And he also contributed to the global anti-colonial narratives that fueled colonial fights and crises across the globe. I would like to conclude my presentation remembering one of his very famous words, that national liberation is merely necessarily an act of culture. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brighta and Sarah. She's from the Department of International Studies at Stella Marie, Chennai. Now I'll invite Anna Maria Joseph. Anna Maria, I understand it's quite late. She is currently doing a fellowship in Taiwan. She coordinates our Africa program, and the Africa Monitor is her passion. Anna Maria, over to you.
Thank you, sir. I hope I'm audible.
We can hear you.
Am I? Okay. Good evening, all. First of all, thank you, Indian Institute of World Culture, for organizing this event and also giving me this opportunity. More than discussing these four African leaders, this was a great opportunity for me and our Africa team in INEAS to learn about these Africa's great leaders and their legacies. We have put very little investment to study about African leaders in our institute. Let me share my screen. I have a very short presentation. Slideshow. I hope it's visible.
You can see that.
Okay. We listened to my fellow colleagues speaking about Patrice Lumumba, who unified Congo, and Kwame Nkrumah, a great Pan-Africanist, Oliver Tambo, who fought against apartheid, and Amilcar Cabral, who believed in Pan-Africanism and African culture as a foundation to it. Beyond these four leaders, many scholars who study Africa, who are interested in studying Africa, might have heard about Thomas Sankara from Burkina Faso for his anti-imperialist stance and policies to build a self-reliant and prosperous independent Burkina Faso. About Jomo Kenyatta from Kenya, who fought fought against the British rule in Kenya and shaped Kenya's post-colonial independence policies. And one of the most prominent leaders, Julius Nyerere from Tanzania, who introduced the idea of Ujamaa, also known as familyhood. Also, women leaders like Miriam Makeba, who is also known by the name Mama Africa. She was a South African singer who fought against apartheid. These leaders and their great legacies remain unknown to the world, and discussions on Africa's prominent political leaders, their ideologies, and legacies are very rare. And I hope today's discussion on four African leaders will be a first step towards rediscovering their unsung legacies. Today, as a scholar interested in studying Africa, I have tried to do two things. First, to discuss why the world has forgotten these leaders. What are the socio-political factors within and outside Africa which has contributed to the world being unknown to these leaders? And second part, most importantly, why their teachings and ideas are all the more important in contemporary Africa. First, what are the major reasons why they are unknown to the world or why they are forgotten to the world? First reason I have identified is the Eurocentric narratives. The Eurocentric narratives about African leaders during the decolonization period and the Cold War era were irrational, violent, and ideologically extremist. Unlike India, the colonialist presented Africa's independence more like a gift rather than a result of resistance. Leaders like Lumumba and Cabral were depicted as communist or destabilizers than nation builders. Second reason was the Cold War geopolitics. During the Cold War, African leaders advocating for Pan-Africanism were targeted by Western powers because they feared that many African countries would align with Russia, USSR. Between 70s, 80s, and early 90s, many assassinations of leaders, including Lumumba and Thomas Sankara, and coups detoppling Nkrumah, were allegedly supported by Western powers, mainly to contain their ideas and to exert neo-colonial control. Third reason I identified was the post-colonial African politics. Following the so-called African Renaissance during 1960s and formation of independent African states, many African countries were exposed to an alien form of political system, and the post-colonial new elite sought legitimacy through control, and they were hostile towards democratic or socialist vision of early leaders. Many authoritarian and military regimes who came after 1960s, 1980s, and 1990s erased those national movements and their legacies to avoid a mass uprising. Many heroes were remembered only if they fit the ruling party or political leadership's political narratives. Last reason I identified is the ignorance towards African knowledge. While Western political thinkers became the mainstream, oral writings and ideologies of African leaders like Cabral, Nkrumah, and Nyerere were sidelined, and these archives remain inaccessible, scattered, and underfunded. Even in African school curriculum, Cabral, Sankara, Nkrumah, or Lumumba are not taught along with Voltaire, John Locke, Thomas Hobbes, or Karl Marx. Why in contemporary Africa these African leaders and their ideas are very important. These ideas of these leaders are of major relevance to contemporary African challenges. Their vision of unity and justice are more important than ever. Many African countries currently face elite politics, corruption, political disconnection from grassroots, military coups, conflicts, and threat of foreign exploitation. Meanwhile, the institutions these leaders formed, including African Union, ECOWAS, are facing a major challenge in making decisions and challenges in terms of its structural, effective functioning. The Pan-African ideologies of these forgotten leaders and their people-centered leadership needs a reawakening, especially in youth movements and protests, which are very frequent in many African countries recently. Cabral and Nkrumah proposed Africa's need for economic independence, self-reliance, local industries, and land reforms. Their ideas are solutions to Africa's current economic problems, which is mainly challenged by export-driven and dependency-dominated economy rather than internal growth. Leaders like Lumumba and Cabral spoke about imperialism, capitalism, and global injustice. Today, Africa is still being exploited for resources, labor, and geopolitical ambitions. These leaders led the path toward shaping African politics' idea of Pan-Africanism, moreover, colonial resistance, and spread of nationalist ideologies across African countries. While concluding my note, I hope today's discussion is a starting point towards rediscovering their unsung legacies, and rediscovering does not remain a remembrance but a revival of their writings, ideas, and life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna Maria, not only for touching on the four leaders that we are discussing today, but also going beyond those four and looking at some of the other countries, some of the other leaders, and also looking at why, what happened to rest of the world, looking at them and also telling us how important their teachings are for contemporary Africa. Now, with that note, let me come back to Raju, Nandita, and Venkatesh. Didn't I tell you my young scholars will do a much better job than what I did with you when I came last week? Yeah. Now the floor is yours, Raju. You can take it forward.
Thank you very much. And I would just like to congratulate all of the scholars who gave this presentation. Yeah, I was blown away. I think it was you all did, Preeta, Santhya, Parna, and Brighty, you and Anumaria for your final synthesis. I think you all did a very wonderful job. I think maybe we have a few minutes we can take for discussion. I just wanted to start it off by, really saying that one thing that has really come out to me from all of your presentations is the importance of taking these figures as thinkers, as philosophers, and paying attention to their ideas, not just as political leaders, but as thinkers. And, in many ways, you're right. I think maybe Anu Maria, you said it, and you're very right. In political theory, we read John Locke, liberalism, we read Karl Marx. But then what do we, the 20th century, what shapes political theory in the 20th century and going forward in the 21st century? And I don't think we can do it unless we pay attention to the ideas of these thinkers as well as anti-colonial thinkers around the world. And the other point you made about remembering history, I mean, I agree with you completely that, we have to remember this history. We have to remember who fought for peace. We have to remember who fought against racism. And I would say it's unpopular sometimes to remember this history. And it is courageous to, bring it and remember it in a way that we can learn for our time, just as many of you said. And finally, I think this relationship with India, if I could just add to your presentations, I mean, I think there's more to discover there and more work needs to be done. I recently discovered that the daughter of Amilcar Cabral, her name is Indra Cabral, of course, named after Indira Gandhi. And so, these close relationships that were formed, I think they really set the foundation for our relationship in this time. And they are something that we need to learn more about and study more. So I'll just start it off there. And then whoever wants to maybe add some question or comment, we can take 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. Please unmute yourself and go ahead or raise your hand and I'll call on you, one of the two.
Raju, I just wanted to jump in a bit, and I totally agree with you that a great job done by all the scholars, and congratulations once again. And thanks once again to Professor Chandran for setting this up and helping us connect with all of you. My point would be more of a commonality that the world is a very shrunk, small space, and all of us interdepend on each other going forward. And we have seen that with the pandemic coming up and things like that, anything happens in one part of the globe definitely affects all of us. and Africa having approximately around 20% of the world population. And this population is in its teens. The Professor Chandran was telling that the median age of the whole Africa continent is around 20. So that tells us that the next several decades is with people who are there in Africa. So with technology coming in and networking and also the communication advances which has happened, where they have challenges, I think the rest of the world has to jump in terms of making it aware, and the civil society movement, which is very much required, and for the institutions to stabilize and mature in those countries. I think our own governments across the world will listen when more and more of these type of dialogues happen within premier institutions. And so on that note, once again, congratulations to all of you who made the presentation very worthwhile today. And I would like to extend a warm welcome to the Institute whenever you are in Bangalore, and make time to drop into an 80-year-old organization. So this is my small comment.
Thank you. I think Amit has his hand raised. Go ahead. Amit, would you like to say anything? Okay, anybody else? Please feel free. It will be nice if some people give their own comments or questions or engage.
Or if let them think it through. Can I have a question for my team?
Go ahead. Yeah, Amit, we can come back to you. Yeah, go ahead.
If Amit is ready, let him go first.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to contribute few points, and that is where this colonialism and the partition of Africa had started. And I just want to put some pointers that in the 19th century, where the Industrial Revolution had started, and the all of Europe had scarcity of resources, and that is when I guess in Berlin. The Chancellor of Otto Bismarck in 1884, I guess, called upon all the, I think, 14 nations of Europe, including America, to discuss to partition the African continent and peacefully so that they can not fight and divide Africa amicably between them. And I guess that is when King Leopold got his share of this Congo, and as he says that he would civilize the Congo, which he didn't actually, and went upon slaughtering people and plundering the wealth of Congo. And another thing I just wanted to ask Professor is, in all of Africa, I just knew that Ethiopia was the only country which was not colonized. And I just want to know, I was a bit curious that how did they, escape the colonizers all these years? And, somehow, I think at some point of time, Italians had occupied them, but later on, the resistance had, thrown them out. So I just wanted to know that one thing.
Thank you. I mean, what I'll do, I'll pose one question to all the 5 panelists. The point is 2 questions. One, the presentation that you made about their contribution and their legacy is to do with the decolonization and the nationalism and independence. So it's, your presentation and their contribution, they were all. Now, how are we looking at the 2020s? There is literature talking about neo-colonialism in Africa. So my question to all 4 of you is, how relevant these 4 leaders that we discussed in a neo-colonial positioning, especially with their own countries completely fractured. At least in the 40s, 50s, we can say there was a strong colonial presence but now it is in their hands. That's my first question to you. The second question, the all four presentations that you had about the where they got inspired, did they inspire other African movements? Maybe you may want to tell that. And Anna Maria, would you like to take that last question that Amit asked on Ethiopia, because you have done much better work than anybody else in this hall? Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Raju, maybe we can ask them to respond.
Yes, please go ahead. Whichever one of you would.
We'll start with Preeta and go in
Yeah.
that order.
Yeah.
So to the first question on how do we see neo-colonialism in the present day or in the recent past, it's more of a reflection than what I've seen in terms of reading. I think what we see here is again a reflection of the continuing pattern of the global north and global south, which I see as a pattern that's recurring again. For example, if we take China and what China has been doing in Africa, that can be taken as an example to sort of understand neo-colonialism. How still Africa still remains a region or a country wherein resources are extracted from and are given to, rather than the one that is able to sort of hold on to its resources and have self-governance, which was, in fact, one of the visions of all the leaders that we see, for the country to be, or the continent to be able to have its own self-governance or be able to be self-reliant. We see that the hindrance of the global north-south still exists, and still Africa does remain as the one wherein it's extracted for the resources. And I think I'll also draw on to another point that you mentioned in your question as well. This goes back to how Africa still remains fractured, which also goes back to its colonial history. While they still work on a fractured continent, and while there are still issues around ethnicity and conflict and a fractured region, the global north-south pattern continues, but with China as a new player is what I observe from the readings that I've done so far. I'll leave it to the other scholars as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Santhya?
Yes, sure. So regarding your first question on neocolonialism, so we are discussing about that particular phenomenon in 2025, but it is quite inspiring to see that Nkrumah has already written a book in 1960s about neocolonialism. So he described as neocolonialism being the last stage of imperialism, especially as previously mentioned by Preeta. He was all the leaders for that matter, especially Nkrumah, they were very concerned once the colonial powers leave out, indirectly they would be able to assert dominance in their countries. So that is why they geared up and wanted to gain economic independence and wanted to use their resources for their own good. So this is something even in the non-alignment movement, Nkrumah has put forward this particular point strongly in the table of discussion. And in terms of inspiring other movements, Ghana being the first country to gain independence, Nkrumah has taken uh, uh, many steps, like from organizing conferences and talking about how they can also break the shackles of imperialism. So he has done so much for Africa in terms of inspiring others and taking them along with the moment of independence. That's where the whole Pan-African unity idea originates from. So that is from my side, sir.
Aparna?
Was a member of liberation in exile. So in that century itself, we understood the power of international support, both Western and most importantly, developing countries and landlocked in driving changes. We prioritize those countries and their public's minds in fostering a change in this country aspect. And we also brought out this apartheid not as a national crisis but as international problems which should be fought internationally. And he also prioritized the role of youth in this struggles.
Thank you. Brighter, and then Anna Maria.
So on the question of neocolonialism, although that's a word that we are commonly using now, I believe all these leaders and systems that they were trying to initiate during their times, the aspects to combat neocolonialism was inherently there. Drawing from Cabral himself, the idea of liberated zones where there was a independent system of engagement and governance by the people, while there's a larger Western system that's domineering them, and this independent governance system keeping the society together and fighting this larger system that has always inherently been there, but it's consistently being lost in translation as we progress towards more ways in which uh, countries in Africa are losing their independence and access to their own resources. So these revolutionaries, in their initial ideas of what they were looking forward for their own countries, own regions, I believe they had envisioned a future where all of these regions, if not independent, not only in terms of their national identity, but also economically and politically, they had envisioned that if they're not independent in all those regards, the colonial elements were going to come back. And the measures that they had taken long ago did inherently have methods to combat these, but eventually we lost them in translation. And again, while reading, I came across a very interesting concept that Cabral was discussing, which is about the petite bourgeoisie, where he was speaking about how the educated elite in were fighting in these national liberation revolutions should not lose touch with their roots, should come back to the um, original upbringing and the grassroots engagement. If not, they will lose their society to larger powers and other forms of colonialism once independence is achieved. So they were visionaries. They did see this coming. Unfortunately, the nuances as we evolved were too much for a society that was still grappling with the colonial history and the scars it left on itself. So,
Thank you.
so that would be my take. And in terms of uh, Cabral or his movements inspiring other movements, as far as my reading went, the movements in Mozambique and Angola were a lot helped by the movements that he started out there in Guinea. So I would read further into that, but that would be my take. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Anna Maria, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Okay. To start with Amit's question, thank you once again for the questions and the suggestions and for the discussion. To answer Amit's question, Ethiopia was during the colonial times. Ethiopia was under the Aksum Kingdom, and the kingdom was very known for its strong military presence and also diplomatic skills. As you rightly said, Italy tried to colonize Ethiopia, but it never happened. Only for one reason, that it was militarily it was very strong and diplomatically very skilled. So that is one answer. And to answer Sir's question, how these leaders and their ideologies are important in contemporary Africa, one point I noticed is that the protest movement which is happening in Africa recently, if you look at Kenya and Nigeria, they all lack a centralized leadership in carrying out these protest movement. They lack ideological base, a good leadership. I think these African leaders can be a great inspiration for these new protest movements in Africa in terms of their leadership and ideologies. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. With that note, I'll give the floor back to Raju. With another note, Raju, you heard them. Perhaps when they come to Bangalore next time, I'll bring them. It will be a great honor to visit the great center that was visited by really big people. It would be a great honor for us to come there, meet with you, be there. Maybe we can do another round of discussion on Africa expanding, or may I also suggest some of my team members also look at the indigenous communities from north to south, from Canada to Sweden, all the way to Australia and New Zealand and the Pacific Island countries. Maybe we can look at the next round if you want to look at as a part of the global civilization dialogue. Why don't we look at the indigenous communities that are whose voice were not heard? I'm very confident my team will do a great job on looking at that as well. With that note, I'll give the floor back to you. Thank you once again Raju, Nandita, and Venkatesh for this opportunity to let my team speak to you. Over to you.
Okay.
Can I just
Yeah,
say,
thank you.
sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing because I felt very moved by all of your presentations, and actually I learned a lot that I did not know, especially about Cabral, because we didn't go into him in so much detail in our presentation. But in this on this question of neocolonialism, I just wanted to say that that book that Nkrumah wrote, I mean, he was really talking about the West, and I mean, I feel that the history of Africa shows that this like the development of neocolonialism has been to a large extent a development of colonialism, and it really is the West, whose center moves from Europe to America at some point, which has controlled all of the resources in Africa. And I feel that neocolonialism is not only economic but also in the realm of knowledge, and I feel that when it comes to something like China and China's involvement with Africa, um, we have to be, I guess, wary of Western propaganda and discourse in this regard. So I just wanted to say that. And the other thing is, I feel that, like Pan-Africanism, there are ideas of Pan-Asianism, and many of them were championed by our own freedom fighters like Gandhi, like Tagore. I mean, Tagore was really deep into this idea of Pan-Asian unity, and he kind of fought the Japanese on it. I mean, the Japanese were like, Pan-Asian unity under our military domination. And Tagore was like, no, Pan-Asian unity as the unity of the people of Asia. So I just wanted to add that to the discussion, and I thank you so much for the presentations. I felt very moved by them.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I guess it's getting to be 8:15, so maybe for today we will conclude this meeting. And I think I agree, it would be wonderful to have all of you visit the Institute of World Culture and have another engagement like this. These are naturally long discussions which will need more study, which will need more discussion. So with that, I'd like to thank Niyaz and thank all the presenters, thank Professor Subhachandran and all of you for attending. And I think we can conclude this meeting for today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.